Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. A pioneer of modern psychology, Carl Jung, said that, and I think it perfectly encapsulates why most people fail to achieve their financial goals, because I'm sure you've heard the same generic advice over and over again. Take action, you've got to work hard. Of course, everybody knows this, and yet very few actually take consistent action for long enough to see permanent results. Along the way, they sort of subtly sabotage their own progress, not because they're lazy, but because this advice of just try harder is one-dimensional. Of course, it neglects that action doesn't happen in isolation. The real puppeteer of your behavior is in the unconscious mind and its processes. And so trying to do more and neglect everything else is like sprinting whilst having a chain and an anchor tied to your back. And so if you actually focus over the next couple minutes of this lesson, you will actually finally understand something that the vast majority of people never learn in their entire lives. How to bring the unconscious mind into the realm of consciousness, awareness, so that you can control your behavior and therefore your reality. Your financial goals become inevitable. And so to really understand how we gain awareness and therefore control over the unconscious processes, it's important that we start off on the same page. You know, I watch a lot of these sorts of videos, I guess, and a lot of people use words, and I don't actually know what they're talking about. And so if you're new here, I always like to start off with definitions, clarity. And so the two things we need to define very simply is, what is consciousness? People talk about this. What does it mean? Consciousness is simply your field of awareness. How conscious you are is how aware you are. They are synonymous with each other. And what you must understand about consciousness is it's not static, it's dynamic. The metaphor that I will use throughout this lesson is that consciousness is like this curtain that we can open or close. Now, most people, their consciousness, their awareness over their life, their behaviors, their thoughts, their emotions, this curtain is completely closed. They are operating on these automatic, unconscious programs and patterns that creates more of the same. That's why most people struggle to change. The next definition we must understand is, what do I mean when I say the unconscious mind or the unconscious self? Well, all the automatic processes within the mind that happen outside of this field of awareness, the stuff going on behind this curtain of awareness that you are not well aware of happening. It's an unconscious process if you cannot know that it's going on. And two things we must understand about the unconscious process for clarity. Number one, people talk about the subconscious mind. This is more of a pop psychology term. It's not really used in science, but for the purpose of this video, the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind, they kind of mean the same thing. So you can use them interchangeably. Number two, we must understand about the unconscious mind is that these automatic processes don't have a physical location within the brain. You can't cut open a human brain and point at the unconscious mind. It doesn't have a physical location. I'm simply referring to the processes that are happening behind that curtain. That's what I'm talking about when I refer to the unconscious mind or the unconscious self. And so this basic understanding about the unconscious mind and its relationship with consciousness, we can very quickly understand why operating with action alone is very one-dimensional. It doesn't get you very far because the vast majority of behavior is controlled by unconscious patterns and processes. And so trying to influence your outcomes, trying to achieve your financial goals with action alone, just trying to do more, is like turning up to a gunfight at high noon with a pair of chopsticks. You don't stand much of a chance. And that's, I don't know, it's a funny illustration, but it's clear. And we can drive this home through this iceberg metaphor. Deliberate action represents the tip. It's kind of like the meme. I wish I actually got the meme template for this. Another day. But the deliberate action represents a very small percentage of what's actually controlling your reality. The other things, thoughts, beliefs, patterns, processes, identity, and emotions play such a crucial role in the outcomes that you get. And so if you're just trying to do more and you're not in control of anything else, you are really going to struggle. And this is why the vast majority of people don't achieve their goals. You know, they start taking action and then eventually they just U-turn. They come back to the same place they started at. They go back to more of the same. Most people fail. This is why, because your unconscious is programmed this way. And what we're going to do is become aware of this programming. And with awareness, we can gain control. And the power of this can really be explained in this model. Now, there is a lot going on here, and I actually have filmed it's already on my channel, a over 50 minutes lesson, and it is an absolute game changer. It goes through this entire model in absolute detail, and I highly recommend you watch it after this lesson. I'll link it in the description, and if you already have seen it, I highly recommend you see it again because there is so much there. It's super dense. But ultimately, this is omnimorphic reality. Omni meaning total, morph meaning change. And so what we're really trying to understand here is instead of just trying to change deliberate action down here, which makes up 20% of action, we want to change everything all at once. You see, what this is showing is how your internal world creates or imprints itself on your external world, because external reality is simply a reflection of an internal cause. This is the mechanism by which it happens. Starts at your self-concept, which defines how you think and how you feel, which defines your action, which defines your outcomes. There's a lot more going on here, but fundamentally, we're aligning all of these together. And so we're taking unconscious emotion, unconscious thought, and unconscious beliefs, we're aligning them all together along with our deliberate action with your desired goal. When we do this, we're playing now 5D chess, 5-dimensional chess instead of 1-dimensional chess. Instead of turning up to the gunfight with a pair of chopsticks, let's say you're in a tank. Let's say that's a tank. I don't know. You get the idea. We now have a competitive advantage. We now have proper levers that we can pull in terms of controlling our reality and therefore achieving financial goals. It's very important we preface this so we can become conscious of these unconscious processes. And instead of fate controlling our life, we get in the driver's seat. And that's what we're really zooming in here. And so remember the metaphor I had about the curtain of awareness. It's dynamic. We can open the curtain of awareness and become aware of some unconscious process. Well, during this lesson, we are going to explore 3 unconscious processes, which are the most important ones to become aware of and control to control your reality. If you do not have a grip over thoughts and emotions, unseen forces, or identity and beliefs, you do not stand a chance. And so I'm going to go through each one of these individually, how they actually work, and then practically how we gain awareness and control. What we must understand is, I will keep saying this, awareness in any realm or endeavor in life is the prerequisite of control. You cannot control something that you are not aware of or you don't even know exists in the first place. You must understand this. And so what we're going to do is pull back the curtain on 3 unconscious processes and make them conscious. Once they're conscious, they're within the locus of our deliberate control. And so the first unconscious process which we're pulling the curtain back on is our automatic thought and emotional patterns. This is such a big one, man. So the first thing you need to understand is that thoughts and emotions don't happen in isolation. If we actually go back up to this model real quick, we can see that emotion and thought are actually connected here with a bidirectional arrow because they are in this self-reinforcing loop. Thoughts fuel emotion and emotion fuels thoughts. Think about it this way. Something negative happens in your environment. You feel anxious. The emotion of anxiousness has come in the body. The mind then reacts to the body and you begin to think anxious thoughts. Those anxious thoughts fuel that emotion further. And what happens is they reinforce each other. They strengthen each other. They're in this symbiotic relationship. And so this is why we're exploring thoughts and emotions together. They are inextricably linked with each other. And so these thought and emotional patterns, thinking and feeling patterns, have 3 mechanisms. When they're in complete autopilot, which, by the way, at a default state, the human mind thinks between, the latest research is between 40 and 60,000 thoughts per day. And the vast majority of those thoughts are completely unconscious. You are not aware of what they're actually about. You are not aware of them, but they are influencing your behavior and how you feel. And so they're so important to start to gain awareness over. And what you must understand is when your thoughts are on autopilot, when your emotions are on autopilot, which they are by default if we haven't done this purposeful work, you are creating more of the same. You see, every study in psychology over the last century points to the same truth. Psychology can be summed up in one sentence. Human nature, the most fundamental point is that we avoid pain, seek pleasure. And that goes against our goal because the goal requires short-term hardship for long-term gain. That goes against that evolutionary wiring, that programming, which sure kept us alive on the Serengeti 200,000 years ago when we were hunter-gatherers, but no longer. And so when we are not in control, it goes back to this primal wiring in keeping everything the same, reinforcing the same, because the same, as in the same outcomes, everything going the same action, the same thoughts, the same emotion, represents safety. That represents familiarity, the known, which represents zero risk. So your primal wiring is to keep you the same through three mechanisms, and I'll go through each of them now. Number one, thoughts and emotions combine to create what I call a state of being. The state of being can be referred to as the cumulative felt tone of your thoughts and emotions over a given time period, kind of like a mood. This is when they begin to really fuse into one. It creates this mood. Your state of being is the largest shareholder determining the action you take. If we come back to here for a second, you see your state of being created from your thoughts and emotions combining together, direct arrow down into your action. Think about it. The way someone thinks and feels over a given time period is going to determine how they act. People don't rarely act beyond how they feel and how they think, and trying to do that for long periods of time is really quite impossible. If you feel confident, you think confident thoughts, you're going to take confident action. They align with each other. And so if our thoughts and emotions are on autopilot, our action isn't going to be conducive towards taking relentless, consistent action for your goal. It's going to be closer to what's kept you the same. And so if we are not in control of this process, this mechanism will control our action through our thoughts and emotions. That's the first mechanism. Secondly, this goes further, because what happens when you try and venture outside of the zone of familiarity, the zone that represents your identity, when you're going after a new goal, which you need to do, you leave the comfort zone. The unconscious mind, the unconscious self, uses thoughts and emotions to combine into a state of being, and they build up so much, they fuel each other in this reinforcing loop that they create immense levels of emotional resistance. Resistance is the difficulty, the adversity that you encounter when you're going towards your goal. Now, this is all just negative emotion, the fear, the anxiety, the doubt. But you ever notice you're just going along your day and then you encounter a huge dose of negative resistance or emotion when you're trying to do something very important. You're making progress towards the goal, but this immense amount of resistance arises. And it almost seems like it's come out of nowhere, but it hasn't. It's been brewing and reaching a critical mass in the unconscious processes that you haven't been aware of, and then it's spilled over. And this immense amount of emotional resistance causes inconsistency, which is the death of all dreams, the death of all goals. Because a goal, when you really break it down to it, achieving success is simply a consistent sequence of action towards a defined outcome. If you stay consistent with the actions and you're doing the right things, you're going to make it. And so inconsistency is the death. This causes inconsistency, this built up emotional resistance. It's so overwhelming. People say, well, I'll start tomorrow. And then they U-turn and then they go back on their initial intention. And what do you know? They failed. They quit. The third mechanism in which automatic thoughts and emotions really hold you back and hold you to the same is really interesting. It's this interaction with time. The human mind has this proclivity towards compulsive thought, which is just this constant barrage of random thought, which we already discussed, 40 to 60,000 per day. But what you must understand about these thoughts is two things. Number one, they lean negative. That's an evolutionary thing. We want to stay on top of what's going wrong because wrong represents risk. Number two, though, they lean towards the illusions of time, not the present moment, the past and the future. And so what happens is you're thinking, you're ruminating on the pain of the past, the failures, the doubts, the regrets, and then what you're doing is you're worrying about them happening in the future. You're doing something called negative visualization. And what people do is when they live unconsciously in the past and the future, is they project the pain, everything about the past, they live in it, they project it onto the future. They create more of the same by continuing the past onto the future through the present moment. Again, huge influence in your behavior, but specifically, it's because your thoughts and emotions are negative, they're resisting your goal, and they are projecting the past onto the future. And so these mechanisms are absolutely lethal to actually creating change in your life. You cannot create change if these three are working against you. And so what we need to do is become aware of these thought and emotional patterns, the thoughts and emotions that are rising behind this curtain of consciousness. And so the obvious question is, how do we open up this curtain of awareness, become aware of these patterns, these thoughts and emotions as they are arising, and then with awareness, we have control? Well, the solution is what I call metacognitive return. To understand this, you need to know that most of the time you are spending your attention is spent distracted in thought, compulsive thought, 40 to 60,000 being peppered at you every single day. You are not living in the present moment because you do not have a skill of metacognition. Metacognition refers to thinking about thinking, or just being aware of thought in itself. The way we develop this skill of basically being able to become the observer of your thoughts and emotions rather than the one experiencing it. Because right now you are the thinker and the feeler. Those thoughts and emotions, you are completely entangled within them. They are influencing your every single move. This is not ideal because this negative emotion and thought is going to bring you back to the past the same. And so we need to detach from it. The way we detach is by becoming the observer. This is when we're expressing the skill of metacognition. Metacognition can really only be refined one way, which is mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness meditation is essentially some form of meditation where you focus on one thing, typically your breath, and then you get distracted and you bring yourself back to the present moment. That noticing of distraction, you go, I'm thinking, and then bringing yourself back to the present moment, that is metacognitive return. You see, you're metacognitive, you're aware that you've been distracted and you bring yourself back. That's the important skill that you need to understand. And so there's this channel on YouTube called Declutter the Mind, 30-minute guided meditation for mindfulness. Just search it up. This is a certified classic. I have listened to this every single day, the 30-minute version, but I think there's a 20 and a 10, so you can start small and build your way up. I've listened to this every day for the last couple of years. This will change your life because what you'll notice after consistent months of doing meditation, this is something that builds up very, very slowly. You will suck at first, but eventually you will start to go through life and you just have this new gained awareness over everything that's going on within your mind. You really do take a step back. You become the observer instead of the thinker and the feeler. And so what happens when you are the observer is you detach from the thought. The goal here isn't to eliminate thought and emotion. They are inevitable. They will continue to be compulsively coming up. You must understand thought is like a process out of our control, similar to our heartbeat. It will always be there. But the goal here is to be aware of it, not get stuck within it in the unconscious. We open up that curtain of consciousness, we step back, we become the observer, and by doing that, we can simply observe and watch thoughts just come and go, like sort of clouds just floating in the sky. We do not have to interact with them. They do not influence us. And ultimately, we can make deliberate choice in terms of if we want to follow that thought, if we want to entertain it, if we want to act along with that emotion, or we want to not act with that emotion. We gain deliberate choice over our action. Remember, thought and emotion are a large shareholder in the action you take, but the moment we can step back, become the observer of them rather than the person experiencing them and abiding by them and getting lost in them, We step back, we observe, we gain that metacognition, we gain that awareness. Awareness is the prerequisite of control. We can begin to start deliberate choice. That is so important. If you cannot be aware of what you're thinking and feeling, you just don't have control over behavior. You don't have control over your outcomes. Such an important curtain to open up. Have a look at this unconscious process. Otherwise, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. Moving on to number 2. The second unconscious process which we're pulling back the curtain on is what I call unseen forces. This is the sort of intuition, pattern recognition, insight, that sort of spike of creativity that you get. You know, you've ever been in the shower and you've been facing this persistent problem and you just get it in a spike of insight. You just get the answer to your problem. That is unseen forces, otherwise known as intuition. Now, to put simply, to access your unseen forces, to become more cognizant and aware of this process, you must be calm. That's the only state you really need to be in. You just need to be calm. Now, the issue is when people are going towards their goal, calm isn't the first word you'd use when you're taking relentless action towards something that you desperately want. And the solution that many people come up with is the law of detachment, LOD. And I think this is directionally going in the right direction, but it's not accurate. People say that you need to let go of the outcome and you need to detach from the desire of the goal. But what you must understand, when you study human nature, you understand that without desire, there is no action. We take action for reasons. We follow incentives. If we do not care or want the goal, we will not take action towards it. And so law of detachment taken at face value isn't effective. Desire isn't the enemy, it is where it is rooted. And so I want to introduce the 2 forms of desire which most people will live in. Need desire and want desire. The difference between need desire and want desire is one very clear principle. It is the degree of emotional dependency an individual has on the outcome of the goal. It's this emotional attachment to the goal happening. Now, when you're in need desire, you have total dependency on the outcome of the goal. Therefore, you're operating out of scarcity, fear, desperation. Desperation creates separation because the stakes, the pressure is too high. You cannot take clear action. You're acting out of analysis paralysis. This means your mind is in, or your nervous system is in this high beta sympathetic state, high beta scattered thought. You're in this fight or flight mode where the conscious mind is basically trying to take everything over. These are the sort of people who try to control absolutely every single variable. They're trying to white knuckle their way to the goal. This is really ineffective because we can't access those unseen forces. You remember that iceberg that I showed you? It's a similar thing. You know, people say that the power of the mind, 95% of it's unconscious, 5% conscious. Perhaps it's not that extreme, but the unconscious is incredibly powerful in problem solving when you have a clear defined target and you're taking consistent action towards it. When you're doing that, it can really help you, but not when you're in this fight or flight, sympathetic, high beta state because your conscious mind is taking over. You're trying to control absolutely everything. Your only care is about what's right in front of you. And so the unconscious mind is like, all right, big problem here. We're not going to help you. So we need to shift over to want desire. This means less emotional dependency. We kind of reach this Goldilocks zone of stakes and pressure. It's not too high, but it's not too low either. We need to take the action, but we don't need to be too high that we're not taking enough action, if that makes sense. With this, we can access lower brainwave states because we're in more certainty, calm, confidence, any sort of word that starts with C. And from this, we access alpha and a parasympathetic nervous system organization where this is associated with rest and digest. This is something where we can see beyond the horizon. We can look up. We're not panicking as much. We're calmer, therefore we can access more of these unseen forces, the incredible power of the unconscious mind to solve the problems that the conscious mind would just never figure out because your unconscious mind in the background is sifting through data, it's recognizing patterns, and it will come up with a solution. Across all cultures, there's this one saying, you've got to sleep on it, man. If you're facing a problem, sleep on it. There's a reason people say that because the unconscious mind is incredibly powerful. in solving problems. And you can see this, if you study any successful people throughout history, they talk about this. For example, Thomas Edison, a major example if you read one of his biographies. And there's loads of other stuff going on with need and want, desire. I've discussed it in other lessons. But the important thing here with unseen forces is we need to operate from want, desire to access them. Otherwise, we're just blocking them. But the issue here is, how do we do that? You know, it's all well and good saying, well, you just don't need to care as much. Stop caring as much. But it's like, all I care about is this goal. I want to be financially independent. I don't have much time to do this. This is important to me. I can't just say it's not important and pretend like that. That's not how it works. And I get that. So the way we access want, desire without someone just saying, forget about it. You got to just not care, detach. What does that mean? Well, the way we can operate from want, desire is through something which I call inevitability embodiment. And I've discussed this before, but I'll approach it from a unique angle here. Inevitability embodiment is very simple. It's simply that you embody the version of you for whom the goal is inevitable. The version of you right now for whom the goal would be unavoidable. And so you've just got to paint a picture of how this person acts, how they think, how do they feel, what routines, what habits do they have, everything about this person. What version of you would it be just unavoidable for them to achieve the goal? Then you just become them, you method act. Sure, it's unfamiliar at first, but eventually this is just going to become the known, otherwise known as your identity. This is the solution, because logically, if you know that you are being the version of you for whom the goal is inevitable, most importantly with the actions that you're taking, if you know every single day that you're taking the actions that the inevitable version of you would take to get to the goal, you know for a fact that you're getting closer. It's just a series of time, or it's just a question of time, but you have no question in your ability to be consistent, then the goal is inevitable. When you sit in the seat of inevitability, calm, confidence, conviction is easy to access. Why would you panic so much? Why would you live in fear? You wouldn't be in this scarcity mindset of need, desire. I mean, that looks pretty terrible. You don't want that. You wouldn't be there if you knew for a fact you would achieve the goal. And so that's kind of a shortcut in terms of how we achieve more of this confidence, calm, and just operational consistency. That's how we achieve it without doing all of this detaching and not caring. We can care about something, but if we know for a fact that it will be achieved, we can operate from calm, we can access these unseen forces within this Goldilocks zone of dependency, not too low where we're not taking action, but not too high where everything feels like life or death. And that's where we access these unseen forces, this really powerful process in the unconscious mind, which most people never touch because they care too much and they don't have enough faith in their ability to achieve the goal, so they're operating out of fear. That's the second process which we need to unveil with a curtain of awareness. The third process is honestly probably the most important, but actually maybe the most simple as well. We're opening the curtain on our beliefs. Now, if you remember this model which I showed you earlier, at the top here we've got self-concept. Self-concept is king. Self-concept is synonymous with your identity or your self-image. It's who you believe you are. So your self-concept is made up of all the beliefs that you hold about yourself and your place in the world around you. And your belief or beliefs is simply a subjective value judgment. And this is synonymous with opinions, biases, perceptions, interpretations. It's all the same word. And so it's your beliefs fundamentally that sits above everything else. It's your beliefs that determine how you feel, how you think, how you act, and therefore external reality. External reality is a reflection of an internal cause. That internal cause starts and ends with your beliefs. Your perception creates the projection you see in the world around you. People say this, but there's never really a clear idea. How do I know what my beliefs are? How do I actually identify the beliefs that I have and then control them and change them? If you don't know what beliefs you have, how can you change them? People talk about beliefs all day, but what do you mean? What are you talking about? Well, to be clear, there is no list. There is no definitive list of belief 1, I believe X. Belief 2, I believe X about Y. That doesn't exist, but belief leaves clues. And there are 3 sources of clues that we can find what we believe about ourselves and the world around us. Very simple. Number 1, the actions that we take determine who we believe we are. Look at the last week of your life. What actions have you taken? What habits are you following? What routine do you follow? That is a fundamental indicator of who you believe you are. The action is an expression of identity. Aristotle said we are what we repeatedly do. And so look at your actions and say, what must someone believe to take this sort of action? If you're acting out of fear, you're acting out of complacency, you're self-sabotaging, what does that say about yourself? You're insecure perhaps, you don't believe in yourself, you don't hold positive beliefs about your abilities, or you hold negative beliefs about money. What may it be? Look at your actions. Huge clue. Number 2, look at your outcomes. Now, actions and outcomes are pretty similar. How you act is going to determine what you get. That's the only way. But outcomes, look at your bank account, look at your income, look outside. What car is parked outside? What house are you in right now? How is your life? With a financial lens, look at your outcomes. What must someone believe to be true about their life if it looks like this? Remember, what you believe is your projection, perception, projection. They are one. And so you cannot escape from this. If you make $500 a month and you're living in your mum's basement, it's impossible for you to believe that all of the supporting beliefs for God, for money. It's impossible for you to believe that you are capable of achieving wealth. It's impossible because you just haven't achieved it. Unless if you have some mental disorder or delusion of some kind, these beliefs aren't aligned. The final clue is the emotions you feel. Now this is very clear because emotion is your belief in action. Remember, belief is a subjective value judgment about a certain thing. And so the emotions you feel is that subjective value judgment in play. So if you feel fear towards something, you have a belief that that thing marks a threat. There's a perceived threat within that thing, whichever you feel fear towards. If you feel happy, if you feel confident about something, that says the beliefs you hold about yourself. And so through these 3 pools of clues, we can build up a very definitive list of our limiting beliefs, the stuff that's holding us back, the unconscious limiting beliefs. We can actually pull back that curtain, become aware of them through these 3 pools where we find clues about what they might be, the significant limiting beliefs that are holding you back, and also the ones that are working for you as well. That's important to recognize. The ones that have served you well up until now, because it's not all doom and gloom. There are things you're doing well right now, whether you realize it or not. And so once we can understand what our limiting beliefs are, we list them down. Maybe I wouldn't go further than maybe 10. There are significant ones that are really the most important ones that are keeping you living in fear. They're the ones that you pull out. And so you look at these beliefs and now you know what you need to change. You're aware of these beliefs. Once you become aware of something, you gain control. And so the way we begin to change belief is we provide contrary evidence. Subjective value judgment is based on all the experience you've had thus far in your life. And so you need to create new experience to shift that belief, that certain limiting belief. And so if you have a limiting belief about creating content, you need to start taking action that proves that content isn't scary, or whatever the specific belief you have about content, just for that specific example. You provide contrary evidence in the way you act. And then also you can do this through visualization. The mind cannot differentiate between real and vividly imagined. So visualization, hypnosis, there are other tools where we can do this artificially to speed up this process of shifting limiting beliefs into stuff that supports you. You can get rid of those unconscious blocks. And so what we've really done here is quite important. We have gone through these 3 curtains. We now have awareness over the thoughts and emotions we have, our unseen forces, our identity and beliefs. We can now control them. We can now control, if we come back to the model, which it all comes back to this, the beliefs we hold about ourselves, otherwise known as self-concept, our emotions and our thoughts, otherwise known as state of being, and also, of course, our action. These all play into action in the first place, but we're not neglecting deliberate action. Of course, action is important. We align them all together. This is omnimorphic change, total transformation. We have awareness, it's the prerequisite of control. We have now gained control. We can now deliberately choose who we want to be and therefore what we get. If you found this valuable, it's your lucky day, because I'm going to link a video on the screen now that builds directly on this and is for people who are serious about getting rich by mastering their mind. I'll see you in there. Godspeed.